Speech events. Now, speech events are actually linguistic exchanges realized in real life context with specific participants, with a code choice, that is, with specific language codes and the choices that have been made for that specific event, and that code choice actually imposes certain rights and obligations between participants. So, what is constant within a speech event is not just the topic, but also the interpersonal power balance and also the code choice that has allowed that interpersonal balance to stay constant within a linguistic exchange to call it a speech event. Now we are talking about rights and obligations and the balance that is derived. Now this balance is derived from certain salient features that the participants in a speech event recognize. And these are more often than not situational features. Now, what are the situational features? That would mean that this would depend on within this setting what activity is going on, who are the participants, and what the situation itself is about. So, participant status would matter. The topic being discussed, that would make a difference. But having said that, we need to remember that what we consider as salient features might not always be the same for each speech event. For instance, if the identity of a person is important in a given speech event, it might not be so important in another speech event. And we will come back to an example in this context in a minute. What we are saying now with reference to speech event and which needs to be kept in mind is that this concept of rights and obligations balance is derived from a relatively constant across the same type of exchange. That means the relationship between the participants in a speech event of a specific kind is always more or less the same. That is, if you talk about a speech event between teacher and student, a doctor and a patient, or two friends, that relational aspect will be more or less the same. And the salient feature, depending on who you are talking to, which situation it is, that would differ. And an interesting example which we can also relate to our own context is given in your textbook. So you have this example of two guards talking to each other, and the moment one guard sees the other, he asks him, why has he come over here and what is the purpose of the visit? And now in this first exchange or the speech event, the first salient feature was the appearance of the person. The first one was trying to assess what was the ethnicity of that person. So the moment he saw that he was like African, Kenyan, so but not of the same ethnicity as he himself was, he used this local lingua franca, ius civili. And then later on, as soon as he realized during the exchange that he belonged to the same ethnic group, then the speech event itself changed because he moved on to this shared code of their mother tongue. Another example, let's come back to our own Pakistani example in this context. For instance, you are meeting somebody at a meeting, the meeting goes on in the official language. After the meeting, you realize that the person belongs to your own community, own ethnic group, or you have another relationship as a friend also with the person. So you might step aside now and then talk to that person on a personal matter. Now, these are two different speech events in which the relational power between the same participants has changed, the topic has changed, and the salience has changed. So, this is exactly what we are talking about in this speech event.